All right. So good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for jumping in and for joining us today. This isn't a Wendy event. This is an event for all of us. So I'm just the Vanna White to Mark Long. Okay, so I'll turn the letters, and he can do all of the great knowledge. For many people on the webinar this morning, a lot of you will know Mark. Mark has a long history in the company building and incubation space. He's currently the Director of Incubation Services for Innovate at the Hub in Gainesville, Florida. But beyond that, Mark's done a lot of work globally with incubation centers and helping them get up and running, helping them scale, helping them figure out where to go in times of trouble. So a lot of us talked about putting together a series like this where we could all just come together and share whatever we can at this time to kind of help one another. And so that's really the spirit of the webinar series, is, not just to have a few people, but to have as many people as we can that want to volunteer to participate and share something, do so. So for any of you that are on the webinar today, if that strikes a chord with you, please just, I volunteered to kind of be the shopkeeper and help with the back end. So please feel free to just email me if there's a topic or something you think that you're doing that others might benefit from. And we'll be sure to get you linked into the roster of webinars. But today, it's great to have Mark. Mark emailed me. Well, when I looked early this morning, he emailed me to say, hey, guess what? I'm now on lockdown, and so I can't go to the office. So like many of us, Mark's working from home today. So it's really, really great to have Mark kick us off in this webinar series and really kind of help us with some real hands-on things to help us manage our innovation centers, our entrepreneurs, and all the mixed in wet labs and everything that come with that. And in this crazy time, what's some of the things that he's doing that he can share with the rest of us. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and I'm going to mute my line and just listen up and take some notes. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Wendy. Of course, first things first, before I touch the keyboard, doing the right thing here like you're supposed to do, and all of you should. This is certainly no joke. COVID now is close to 400,000 reported cases globally, 47,000 here in the United States, with worldwide over 17,000 deaths, but 104,000 people have recovered from it. Incubators, of course, can play a big role or a small role in this, and certainly our clients are concerned about are we going to remain open? Will we be able to work? Can we get financing? Will we ever recover from this? How long is this going to last? And what are you doing for me during this very difficult time? First, a little bit about my operation. I have two incubators. One is the Sid Martin Biotech Incubator, strictly biotechnology, biomedical. Currently 17 clients in that facility. It's operated at 100% capacity for the last 3 years. The other one, UF Innovate, the Hub, is a large mixed-use incubator, 106,000 square foot, some laboratory, some dry lab, some office. 2 weeks ago, I had 62 clients. Now I have 55 clients. I have literally had 7 clients go out of business, including my largest client of 42 employees, in 9 days. My largest client booked events. That was their whole business model. And he came down with tears in his eyes to talk to me and said, I've had this business 5 years. We were having our best year ever. And I lost 95% of my business in 48 hours. So he had to lay everyone off, and he's currently deciding what to do about the future. Again, this points to cash flow, which we will discuss in a little bit, in cash reserves. But if your whole business model disappears, it's tough. So what's the plan for incubators? What's our current plan? We actually have a policy called a disaster contingency plan or emergency access policy that I believe every incubator should have. It's a Word document. I have it on my screen. I don't know if you're able to see that or not, but it is a comprehensive emergency access policy. Basically, what it states is if the university shuts down, as we are officially part of the university and we are a university building, we have arranged for a protocol in either incubator to allow essential pre-registered employees from the company to enter the building to continue essential work. Now, what we emphasize there is, number one, minimal staff and minimal exposure to continue critical operations, manufacturing, experiments. I'm sure those of you in the biotech arena understand we have one company that has over several $1 million in live cells currently being incubated. We have a company developing a vaccine for COVID. We have a company developing a new type of surgical mask that's cheaper and faster to build. We have a company with 20 3D printers that is printing key parts, valves, and turnstops for respirators for several companies right now, and they are working essentially around the clock, as we all hope they would be. But each company has to designate staff. Company management must designate it. They must be designated in a liability waiver, which I'll get to in a second, in advance. And just like a lease, an authorized representative of the company has to sign the signature page. We typically allow one person per lease space to have actual key card access to the building. We have made exemptions for two very large companies on a case-by-case basis. Our staff will be on call to handle extreme emergencies. Now, currently, management, myself, and the two assistant directors are still manning the front desk from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. daily to receive and process UPS, FedEx, and USPS and DHL deliveries. However, even those vendors have expressed to us that they have been told not to go to individual laboratories or offices, but to drop packages at the front desk only for pickup. We are firm about this emergency access policy. It is considered a breach of contract if you violate it and just everybody comes in and works and tries to get in the building with other employees. Again, we are managing this both in person for part of the day, but also through our key card access, for which we can designate who can enter the building and who can't. We have had employees from companies who were not notified that their management did not sign the waiver policy, come to the building and try to run their cards through, so forth, to no avail. We encourage companies to develop a contingency access plan as well, so that they all are informed of what's going on. And I'm going to speak a little more about informing people in just a moment. Secondarily to that disaster contingency plan, we have an assumption of risk, waiver of liability, and hold harmless agreement. This was required by the university, by the Office of General Counsel. It's a very short, very simple, to the point waiver and covenant not to sue, agreement to indemnify and hold harmless, us on behalf of the company. And also, if you go to the bottom of it, it has an exhibit that lists the designated employees for admission to the building in the event of the activity regarding the emergency access policy. In other words, if we activate the emergency access policy, they should already have this on file, which I would say 75% of them did already have it on file, with the name of the employee, where they're supposed to be, what their ID card number is, their phone and contact info, and their email. We have had requests from management to add and delete people, which we have done real time to accommodate our clients. Of course, the big thing here is accommodation of clients. Having a disaster contingency plan in place allows you to not only set access and track people, but also to validate to your management what you're doing to try and prevent any kind of infection or problem, but yet let work continue. Many of these companies, as I said, are either actively working on items that affect this current pandemic, or they're attempting to keep their businesses going. And let's face it, it's great if you have a SaaS company or web services that you can easily work out of your house, but it's not easy to do laboratory work at home. So what we've also done relative to that is counsel each of our companies individually. We have two very large companies in Sid Martin of 30 or more employees that, after discussing it with them, they've gone to a split shift system to continue work, but yet limit exposure among employees. One company has actually about 40 employees, and they have agreed to do 2 shifts from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. And then from noon to 1, they have a crew come in that decontaminates and wipes down everything. And then a second crew of 20 people comes in from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. And they're going to continue this schedule for the foreseeable future until the university declares that we are open for business as usual. So we've worked with them on that. We've worked to ensure that companies that are working through the incubator can VPN in. We have also set up numerous meetings with housekeeping and maintenance staff that are there and on call. We have a limited number of housekeeping and maintenance people that are keeping the building open. And we are currently faced with, as of 5 p.m. last night, a stay-at-home order, a shelter-in-place order by Alachua County government. That has not affected most of our companies negatively because they were already prepared with the disaster policy in place and with the assumption of risk policy to designate essential personnel. Of course, there's many other things affected. Animal care services, as stated, no new protocols can start. Current protocols can continue on a limited basis. Mating pairs of mice and rats and animals need to be separated, and they also have minimal staff coming in. We have donated, many of our companies have donated masks, gloves, gowns, other typical sterile use projects. We have 4 clean rooms in our incubators to the local hospitals to join in this effort. A couple of our companies are going to be featured on regional news down here in South Florida, Central Florida, regarding their efforts to produce items that will assist care personnel during the COVID outbreak. Currently, the situation is very dire for venture investment as well. We've had 2 companies go out of business because their investors pulled out because the variability in the markets. About 4 of the angel investors said they probably would not be reinvesting for a minimum of 6 to 12 months. We have made everyone available of the emergency SBA loan funds, the efforts by the EDA as well, the efforts by the state government in Florida to provide emergency management funds, extension of unemployment, and other emergency funding for all of our companies. As well, we've set up a virtual CEO meeting on Zoom meeting every Wednesday at 11 o'clock in place of standard lunch and learns to simply ask, how can we best help you during this outbreak? This has been extremely well received. Tons of management and other personnel have participated. And in fact, tomorrow we're going to have a larger meeting for employees. We don't want them to feel left out. We're inviting them to join as well. We're having a series of meetings at 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, and 4 o'clock for medium-sized groups to make sure employees are informed as well that we are doing everything we can as a business incubator to help them through this. Last but not least, we have converted many of our educational programs, including our current class of So What, Who Cares, Why Me, on online basis. We've converted our Empowering Women in Technology series to an online basis, and we've converted our management training seminar for beginning entrepreneurs to an online basis as well. So we've been able, through Coursera and Zoom, to move everything to an online basis to continue the process of assuring, grooming, and assisting our entrepreneurs and prospective entrepreneurs in the weeks to come. Before we get to questions, I'm sure you guys have a lot on your mind and a lot to do as well. The number one question we get is, how soon can we get back to work? And honestly, honesty is the best policy. We don't know. Right now, the university is issuing updates every Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. I get a regularly scheduled update as university management. My boss and I speak every Monday at 5 p.m. And then I release a group email. We are also heavily relying on our Slack channel, which I highly recommend. We have a CEO Slack channel, an all employees Slack channel, and an urgent communication Slack channel. We post all our updates on there on what's available, what's not available. But of course, like I said, the number one question is, when can I get back to normal? I don't know that we will ever get back to normal, but we will keep people posted on when they can get back to work. Secondarily to that, the number one question is, what am I going to do to keep paying my employees? This goes back to the cash flow question. Of course, good incubator management, good entrepreneurial management. We have recommended for some time that companies keep a minimum of 6 months liquidity cash available. You know as well as I know that often falls on deaf ears, but there's nothing like real life to drive that point home. The majority of our clients, I'm happy to report, do seem to have about a 2 to 3 month cash reserve. They feel like they'll make it. We've actually had some companies that have online sales businesses of food items. We have a company called Diabetic Kitchen that sells the #1 breakfast cereal on the Amazon, cinnamon pecan granola. I don't even like granola. It's good. And they said their sales have skyrocketed. Of course, another company that produces gourmet chocolate, sales are up. And some of the service companies with internet services, their traffic has increased as well. We do have some software clients that have sent one person in to take advantage of the bandwidth capacity of the incubator. We have a 1 gig dark fiber cable coming into the building, so we do not have any bandwidth problems. Some people have had difficulties holding meetings from home, and they've come into the office. We've set hand sanitizer around all over the place. We now have by the front door a locked box that has hand sanitizer in it with an electric dispenser. We have included at least 8 of those stations outside and inside the building. We've brought in all the outdoor furniture to discourage use by individuals, surfaces where they might additionally pick up something. And again, outside visitors are now prohibited. Has this caused some issues? Yes, there have been some entrepreneurs who have come down, well, this person's supposed to come. They're really important. I need to see them. I need to set up a meeting. And the answer is not in the building. We cannot put other employees at risk. You'll have to meet outside. There's a coffee shop with limited hours across the street. That assumption of risk is on the individual, not on the incubator. So in conclusion, having a good emergency contingency plan is essential, not just for the incubator, but for your clients. Having a waiver of liability and hold harmless agreement is important to have. Having control over access is extremely important to have. I think we can all admit, frankly, that it's tremendously bad publicity for not just the incubator, but for the university to have a establishment where people are supposed to be creative and building new things to become an infection hot zone. Certainly that's not what's important, but it is a fact of life. Limiting exposure to your employees, to your clients. Currently, as I said, my employees are working from home and management is handling the incubator, both incubators from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday only on a limited basis. We do have someone on call. With a biotech incubator, we always have to have someone on call in case of power failure or other problems. So far, no one has called the hotline. So far, we have had no clients openly defying any of the orders. There is a spirit of cooperation and participation that I think we've built in by having this readiness in place. So I've rambled on long enough. I'd certainly like to turn this back to Wendy and John and answer any questions you might have or hear from you about further suggestions that you have in regarding your incubator.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Mark. Such an enormous amount of information. Maybe what we can do is, John, I'm just going to unmute you as well. And then for those that have questions, John, are you live now?
Yeah, I'm live.
Okay, perfect. So for those that have questions or just comments to make or questions of the group, perhaps, just feel free to either type them in the chat box. We can unmute you if you just want to raise your hand, and you can ask your question, openly on open mic. Yeah, let's just turn it open now and let people kind of have that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think in the interest of generating some solid dialogue, if you do raise your hand and you want to speak, it's easy to unmute you.
Yeah.
But I see we already have a. It's not a question. Somebody's staying muted. That's fine.
Okay, I'm going to just move over to me. Oh, we do have.
So here's a question from Anita, Mark, from Anita Bell. We've had a challenge with toilet paper disappearing very quickly. Any systems or lock mechanism suggestions?
We're very fortunate to have this large round dispenser that the university supplies that has 3 rolls in it that rotates. If you turn it, if one roll runs out, you can put the other one in. It locks. Also, the paper towel dispenser locks. We had the same problem initially, is these were disappearing off the front desk. And we actually had a great video of a gentleman walking out with one of these sticking out of his pocket, which became readily obvious that he was taking it home with him. So we installed locking dispensers that fortunately the university had and was in place. What I've heard from other incubators that do not have such a system is they are literally limiting the amount of paper goods they put out. They're putting out like quarter rolls, and they're telling people in the building, since there's limited staff in the building, that look, we're sorry, but it's a fact of life. Some people have committed theft. So if you need it, stop by the front desk and we'll hand you one of the quarter rolls. You can take it with you. So we have cut down on the amount we're providing, but fortunately in our situation, we do have locks for both the paper towels and the toilet paper, but it is a silly problem. And it's endemic everywhere. I look pretty smart for buying that smart toilet 2 years ago now. That's what I feel good about. But
too much information.
Yeah, I hear you. But
so let me just
also, a silly problem, but you do have to take steps to try to prevent it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And let me add, I actually found toilet paper and other paper products on the shelf yesterday morning when I was shopping at a grocery store. And you know, the other kind of interesting dynamic we've seen is that it turns out a lot of craft distilleries have been able to quickly change their production process over to hand sanitizer of all things. So we're starting to see distilleries come to the rescue with the hand sanitizer. So I think we're seeing our whole society starting to really mobilize.
Yeah, we have a company that was making skincare products, lotions and aloe bombs. They have turned 100% to manufacturing hand sanitizer, and they're currently making 100 gallons per day to be distributed in the Southeast U.S.
Yeah, that's great. Here's another question, Mark. It's from Michael. And it really, it's a question that we might want to solicit others to weigh in with. What are some of the key services that clients seem to need and or use under the virtual incubation model as it evolves?
You know, in the virtual model, what we found out, number one, they need is reassurance. That's why we've set up these CEO meetings every Wednesday at 11. And these, if you want to call them town hall meetings with all of the clients that want to participate. I figured we'd maybe have 30–40% of the CEOs on the first CEO meeting last Wednesday. We had 100%. Every single CEO was online. I was stunned. I thought some would be traveling or whatever or so forth. They were all there. They need reassurance. They need to know that they have someone who has their best interest in mind. They need to know that the incubator is still open and functioning. If it's closed, they need to know what services they can access. So secondarily to that, to communication and reassurance, I would say the other services they need is access to the university online library, which the university has been kind enough to open that up to remote access. That's been a huge thing. And access to management. We gave out our cell numbers to everybody, which we traditionally do not do, but access to management so they can pose questions, ask about funding, ask about employee management. That's been probably the third biggest thing for me, and then I'll let somebody else chime in, but has been personnel management. You know, I have to lay people off. What does it mean to furlough people? How do you do that? How does this apply under FMLA? We've had tons of HR questions. We're very fortunate to have a human resources attorney on our advisory board, and she has generously offered her services free of charge to all our clients. So very helpful during these difficult times.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Wendy, did you want to add something to that?
Well, I just was nodding because I'm thinking that's a great takeaway as well, right? Is to look at your boards and look at the resources of people that are available. When you said that about the HR professional, I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of people who could really benefit from that kind of even sounding board and someone with that kind of expertise in terms of, you know, managing at this time. So that's for all of us, you know, just a great place to look first in terms of resources.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
you know, I encourage people who are on the call as well. I mean, we have a nice sized group here, and you know, I'm looking at. I have the luxury of being able to see the names. There's a lot of experience on this call this morning, so feel free to just jump in, because I know that as I look down the list, I know that a lot of you are probably, you know, just like Mark, taking all kinds of different steps right now. So please feel free to share.
So Mark, here's another a specific lab question from Anita Bell. Any more advice or oversight in the case where biolabs need to be shut down? I know the university is talking about shutting down research labs, but how do you deal with company or startup labs?
Well, again, in my situation, the university is in control. I am not. And I make that very clear to my clients that if the university says all operations cease, that includes the incubator. We were able to get this exemption policy, which I recommend you do your best to go to your general counsel and whoever you report to, you know, say, look, we're different. This is businesses, this is their livelihood. They're working on things germane to this pandemic. They need to stay operational. But just in case, again, I cannot emphasize enough, telling your biological science clients, you also need to have a disaster policy. You should have had this in place. In Florida, we have hurricanes. I have literally visited an incubator that caught on fire and burnt partially up, and they had to close it for 3 to 6 months. I think it was 5 months total. Anything can happen. Power loss. We have 8 -80 freezers that contain millions of dollars of cells and chemicals and other biological items and compounds in them. They are backed up by a natural gas generator. They're backed up by CO2 cartridges and canisters. We do everything we can to ensure things keep running. But in case they don't, you as a business need to have a disaster emergency shutdown policy. Fortunately, the university, when they give us notice, they'll usually let us give clients 24 hours to bring everything down to a halt. But in the back of their mind, they should have that policy ready, and they should be ready to shut everything down and walk away if it's required. Otherwise, we've been good so far with this emergency exemption policy to keep things moving. That's all I can tell you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Any other questions, comments, insights from people? I do want to add a little bit to the prior discussion about, you know, what clients are expecting, and we've made extensive use of Microsoft Teams and other online. You know, we use Zoom constantly. It's really becoming the new normal, and I think remote working is going to become something that becomes enmeshed in our culture going forward when this is all behind us. But what we have found, and I'm sure each of you are finding as well, is that not just our clientele, but our broader constituent base, they need and love cadence and you know, feedback. Just I think we all need to be mindful that human contact is incredibly important, particularly in the space in which we work, which is so heavily reliant upon networking and kind of the whole intermingling thing. So anything we can do to keep reaching out to the client base and the broader community base, I think is critical. Mark, here's a question from Carl. How are you handling financial hardship and lease modifications for distressed clients?
You know, that's really the million-dollar question. Out of the 76 clients that we have now, or 72 now, we've had at least 5 that have said, look, if I can't come in, why am I paying you rent? Or, you know, I think you ought to give me a rebate of half if only half my staff can come in. Number one thing, I remind them that I'm in a hardship situation also. I have to meet a budget. I have to make things work. I have to maintain the equipment. The actual service contract just on the autoclaves that I have cost me over $45,000 a year. On the rest of the equipment, you don't really want to know that number. But I understand they're in a hardship, so am I. The second thing I remind them is right now, currently, access is not prohibited. It's just limited to ensure their safety. You know, it's kind of like when my dad took that razor strap off the back of the door, and I knew what that meant. He's like, this is going to hurt you more than it hurts me, but it's good for you and it's the right thing.
No, he said it's going to hurt him more than he said it's going to hurt him more than it's gonna,
that's,
you believe
no,
it
he
hurt
was
you
honest.
more.
He was a preacher. He was honest. He told me this is really going to hurt you. And it did. But honestly, we're all in a big hurt situation. If the incubator closes, and I've discussed this with our management, my boss, Jim O'Connell, the Assistant VP for Commercialization, and Dr. David Norton, the Vice President of Research, we would give rent relief week by week basis until conditions get back to where people can normally access the incubator and normal workflow occurs. Right now, we are taking it on a case-by-case basis. There's no uniform, okay, no rent this week or no rent next month or whatever. We're in a wait-and-see mode. If people ask for rent relief, I'm giving them that answer that currently the incubator is open for use, although it's limited, and we're all in this situation together and we're taking it step by step. There's also the situation, I'll just throw this in as well, is I've been told by my management that if your budget goes down, I mean, I lost, with those 7 companies, just to give you an idea, I lost $42,000 in rent revenue per year in a week, in 9 days, essentially. So my management as well has said, look, we don't want to be in a position where anybody is out of work. But if this continues and if you are forced to give rent relief because it's closed, you may have to furlough staff. And I don't want to do that either. And I don't think my clients want me to furlough staff. They're going to expect the same level of service they had before or better when we get back. Although I admit, since I've gone to online meetings, I've been a lot more efficient.
Let me ask, Wendy, I know you wanted to kind of weigh in with something on that. And while you're doing that, Carl, I'd like you to give some thought as to how you would answer exactly the same question that you asked. I'm not to put you on the spot, but I know that that you always have kind of the policies in place for exactly that type of contingency. But let's start with Wendy, then we'll shift over to Carl, and then there's another question.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think we want to open up the lines to people because I think this is a topic that everyone, you know, everybody has that opportunity to weigh in on. We're all, you know, faced with this situation about just dramatic revenue loss and dramatic cost cutting. So, Carl, I'm just going to unmute you and let you kind of jump in directly here. Just give me one second. There you go. Okay, Carl, have at it.
Yeah, thanks, John, for putting me on the spot. Our meeting on this is later today because we have started to get some questions on it. So last night I thought about it, and these were the scenarios I came up with. So I'm obviously interested in feedback on it. The first is requiring the client to apply for the $25,000 level of the disaster loan, because that requires no collateral and would give us an indication of financial hardship. And if they can't get underwritten for economic injury under disaster recovery, then I could feel good that there's hardship, that we could deal with that on a case-by-case basis and look at lease modification. The second one I came up with is, and I haven't done any financial calculations on this yet, but if we allowed a one-time modification, but you'd have to extend your lease, and then we would give you the same kind of deferral period that the federal government's giving on your first payment, and we would start payments in June, and then you could amortize at no interest over a 6-month period. But you could take 50% of 1 or 2 payments up to a certain maximum amount of money. But the thing you'd have to give us in return so that we could have some level of stability is you'd have to extend your lease by 18 months. The third option I came up with is you could defer 50% of your April lease payment to May, and you wouldn't have to make any changes to your lease modification, and you wouldn't have to apply for the disaster recovery. But, you know, that's me thinking in a vacuum. So I'm certainly interested in how other people navigate it, because I'm sensitive to the issue of we're here to help, but at the same time, I cannot unwind any of the long-term commitments I've made to provide all these services. And so I'm still paying $22,000 a month in utility cost. I'm still paying, you know, monthly costs for internet and phone and all these other things. And so I can't be completely generous and just give it away as some have asked me to do. So I'm trying to balance both, you know, our business model and our desire to provide real assistance where there's proven economic injury. So I'd be open to comments from people on whether they like my ideas or they thought they were terrible, or what other things we might think about doing. But those were the
I think those are all incredibly feasible. I think what I'd like to do is, you know, next week's webinar, I'll lead us through a discussion on bootstrapping for clients, and it'll address kind of the whole, you know, the drying up of discretionary capital out in the market. But I'd like to include, because, you know, we'll know a whole lot more in a week too, Carl, just even looking at the 3 options you've laid out there. And I'd like to make sure that when we do that bootstrapping webinar, that we also include this as part of that same discussion.
Great. Look forward to it.
John, I will say that one of the things we did for about 7 companies that have inquired so far that are okay now, but they're concerned about the future, is we extended their lease by a month free of charge. We told them, look, we can't give you the money back. We don't have it. The university can't give your check back, and we can't just waive rent right now. We need to keep the doors open and operating. But your lease expires January 1, 2021. We'll bump it to February 1, 2021 at no charge for that 1 month. And people have really felt that was a good thing. It's a very small gesture, but it works.
Yeah, no, significant. Let me get to another question here. What other tools are people using besides Zoom, Skype, Slack, GoToMeeting, Google, etc., for interaction with clients? I'm especially interested in new ones that aren't as common that folks might be using. And maybe, Wendy, that's one that we open up to everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if we can just, you know, if we can just get a hand raise or something like that, then we can just, you know, we can do that. You know, something, okay. Just something, you know, the other one that's not mentioned on there is Calendly, you know, and just allowing people to book in slots when you're, I think it's to Mark's point about being available, especially as a manager. and a coach to these clients is just knowing, through tools like Calendly and others that, you're available and they can slot in whenever they know that they need help, that you're there. I think there's something calming about that. So
we have a company in our building that actually has created a new tool. It's available online. It's called FlipSetter, FlipSetter, and it's basically a virtual whiteboard. And we've started using it for staff meetings to be able to list things, put down our to-do list of covering all our clients.
FlipSetter, it's called?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Wendy, just a Zoom question for you. I can see chat and I can see Q&A, but and I know WebEx has the hand raising capability, but I don't see it on my screen.
No, people can hand raise. We have seen people. You can raise your hand here for sure. In the just have to see in the participant view. Is it? Yeah. Like Ted just raised his hand. So there's the option for the attendees to raise their hands as well. But I think, certainly for me, what I have found is even with Zoom in the past week, I've traditionally used Zoom as a platform for online meetings and the online training for certification. But I think that what I am learning right now is there's so much more available there that I didn't use. So I think that's the other thing. The other takeaway for me is inside all of these tools, there's a whole bunch of other things. And, especially for our ideation program, the FlipSetter notion, Mark, would be really handy to be able to whiteboard back and forth with a client on some of the tools. So, and if that can sit inside something like a Zoom, even better.
Wendy, can you unmute David Mann? He suggests that Jitsi is an open source alternative to Zoom, and I'd like to know more about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, David.
Hi. Yes, up here in snowy Ottawa, right? Yes, I'm a member of a different number of organizations, and we are a bit cash strapped, and to get a conference longer than 40 minutes, which is the basic Zoom package, we have to then spend money. So we've been experimenting with a tool called Jitsi, Jitsi. It's an open source equivalent to Zoom. It has all of the capabilities that Zoom has, like recording, like putting a hand up and questions and things like that. But you can also do live streaming to YouTube and services like that on the net. So as a cheaper alternative, that might be something that people could consider. Also, for those of you within the university environment, I've done a few lectures to 8 universities simultaneously from my home using the Google G Suite, Google Meet services. And that works really, really well. And again, those lectures have been recorded and reused by the students time and time again. So that's 2 suggestions. And I could probably provide more in an email to you, Wendy, if that would be helpful.
Sure. David, can I put you on the spot a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. So because you are so instrumental in developing entrepreneurs, folks, full disclosure, David and I go back a very, very long way. And when I first started WKI, even prior to that, David was instrumental in helping researchers at Nortel Networks, where he was the senior executive helping researchers to really think about the business value of their ideas long before that was even on the radar of anyone. But not only that, David is very, very involved in the venture side and the investment side and angel investing. And so could you just talk a little bit, David, about what you're seeing on the investment side of things?
Yes, I mean, right now I'm involved in a number of companies, early stage startup companies, some of them later stage too, but a very common theme has been experienced by the companies, and that is that I'll give you an example as a company who raised an additional $500,000 investment in January, February, which would take them through to July, August, when some kind of M&A event was going to happen. But now, because of the fact that people seem to have just frozen on trying to buy, and people have frozen on trying to do more investment. They're actually being asked by this round of investors to put the cash on freeze, to hold it and to lay the staff off and to conserve the cash until things change. And that's very complicated here in Canada because we have different rules on how you can do layoffs. So you can do a temporary layoff, which is a maximum of 13 weeks. And a temporary layoff, you have to be certain that you can re-employ. You have to give guarantees that you will re-employ the people at the end of that 13-week period. Now, it doesn't give the staff a lot of cash. It's about $600 a week. But the alternative is to lay them off completely, which then puts you in a complicated situation that you have to pay them, statutory severance pays plus all their vacations. So you end up using the cash in that situation. So these companies are facing quite complex problems. I have a meeting with one this afternoon where we're looking at alternative plans, looking at how to minimize the effect on the companies. And I would say the earlier stage a company is, the bigger this problem is. And even if you're in a market where those services would be essential right now, if you're not at the point of being able to sell, then you're facing investors basically asking you to conserve cash. And that's been driven, I can see it from the Silicon Valley investors we have, I can see it from Japanese investors we have. So it's pretty universal, this demand to cut back the expenditure and to save cash wherever you can. So the measures are quite extreme. So that's the biggest issue that I'm seeing right now. And secondly, in the marketplace, people who could be buying services in Canada, many of those are now working from home. So to get hold of a client where you can actually say close a deal quickly is actually very, very difficult. We're proceeding with it, but it's very, very difficult. Those would be my main things, Wendy, at the moment. So I'm a bit concerned for the, let's say, the startup community, the early stage community, and they're facing a really tough set of issues right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would actually like to make one other comment. As a large chunk of my life has been spent in cybersecurity. So for all the people on the call, be very careful, because the more people who are working from outside of your cybersecurity perimeters, which are typically, inside the network, then the opportunity for, compromise is much greater. And particularly, as I say, the use of a VPN is okay, but that's a capacity constraint on your internal network. And then the use of going into, say, Office 365, which is web-based, and you can arrange to go into that from home. You have all of the issues of cybersecurity that are not typically addressed so vigorously, like in the home environments of the man in the middle, man in the browser type attempts are much easier for the cyber criminals to use. So if you're trying to protect intellectual property, you have to really seriously look at this and make sure you don't shortchange yourself on your IT staff who can take care of those issues.
Okay. A good summary point for all of us to be very, very aware of, for sure. So, Mark, I'll just throw it to you before we end. I want to promise everyone that we'd be done within the hour. So just want to throw it to you for just maybe a closing comment.
Well, to David's point, we've had a couple of clients contact us and say, hey, I can't get to the internet. It's like, did you plug in a server or anything? It's one item per port. Oh, so we've had to call the university IT people remotely, have them reactivate the port. I mean, again, to me, me as the put it in writing guy, I have policies and procedures for everything. And a disaster policy is no exception. You don't know what will happen. None of us do with this. This could last 3 weeks. It could last 3 years. So putting disaster policies and recovery policies, access policies, and reminders, frequent communications with clients makes all the difference. So if you've ever felt like over communicating, great time to do it. And thanks, I appreciate you honoring me by attending and thinking I had something to give. I'm continuing. I'm writing another book. It's called Recruitment, Retention, and Regrets, 35 Years of Client Management. So look for that later this year, and I will definitely have to include a chapter about this.
Or more chapters for sure as we watch what happens in future. So thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for kicking us off, and thank you for being so willing to share all of the templates and tools. For people that want to reach Mark, Mark, now that you're at home, still at mslong@ufl.edu?
You bet.
Okay. So folks, this is recorded. And so we will, or I will, I guess, post this. I think the easiest place for you to get access to it, if you want to listen again, would be to access it off my blog. So I will send you out a notice and post it up there. So if you'd like to have a listen again, and as I say, if you'd like to have templates that Mark's referred to today, please feel free to reach out to him directly. And next week, we are on to talking about probably a lot more of these items, but wrapped into the topic with John Hannock around bootstrapping for startups. So we're going to zero in on the, the whole funding and access to funding, and not just in terms of the issues, but where are the possibilities to help our clients to access funding at this point. So I think that's it. John, do you have anything you want to add in?
Nope. I just appreciate everybody joining us for the first in what's going to be a series of these webinars where I've personally learned a lot, both in terms of the substance of what we're talking about, but also in terms of the form of using this webinar. And we're going to keep working this to the point where you can make yourself a nice hot cup of coffee and join us on a Tuesday morning for some in-depth discussion. We're all here to help everybody else.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. It's really designed to be free-flowing and all about everyone on the call taking part. So I'll do my best to run the controls as we grow our group. Okay, so that's a wrap. Thank you very, very much again, Mark. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone. And I'll see some of you on Friday if you want to jump in and talk about virtual coaching. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday at 11. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, Wendy.